Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a single sign-on with Azure for your Bettyblocks application. To get started, first create an application using the Bettyblocks Azure SSO template. After creating the application, we can get started. So the first thing we need to do when we enter our application is we need to set a configuration. So grab the identifier from your application. In this case, for me, it's Azure SSO install. In your case, it's whatever you just called your application and whatever you can find within your URL. So if you look at the URL, then it's whatever is behind /app. So copy the identifier and open up the configurations tab in Tools. When you have opened up your configuration tab, we need to set the configuration and we need to call this the identifier of your app. We need to set the value to the identifier of your app. And the reason is that the mails that are being sent out from your single sign-on, for example, for a password reset, needs to be sent out from your application. So to set this, we need the identifier. So that's why you need to make sure that whatever's put in here is the identifier of your application. Click Save. And well, that's the first step. And for the second step, what we need, let's have a look at the back office. In here, there's a grid setup called Azure SSO. So you can open up this first record in there and you can click on the Configure SSO action button. And in here, you see the three things that we need to set up the login with this application. We need the app ID. Well, luckily we already have that. We need the issuer and we need the SSO Target URL. Well, to get this target URL, we need to take a look at our Azure Active Directory. So I'm going to close this tab and I'm going to close up this as well. If you would like to read more on how to do this, you can check the README that is being installed while you install the template, or you can follow along with the steps I'm currently following. So to get the information, the first thing we need to do is log into your Microsoft Active Directory. Once you are inside your Azure Active Directory Admin Center, you need to do the following things. First, go to your Azure Active Directory. You can find this in maybe one of your quick tabs or under the All Services setting. So once you have opened up your Azure Active Directory, you can go to the Enterprise Applications part. So look at the left side and click Enterprise Applications. In here, you need to look at the top and click on Add New Application. And what we're going to add a connection to this new application that uses the Azure SAML connection. So you can scroll down. You can also type in something like SAML, for example, and then you need to look for what is called, where is it? It's Active Directory SAML. Here it is, all the way on the right hand side. Azure AD SAML Toolkit. Well, before adding, just make sure that you name your application, the application that you're going to add, something similar to your application within Bettyblocks so that it's easy to know that it's the same application you're talking about. So in this case, I'm also going to call it Azure SSO install. I'm going to create the application. If you, for example, do not have access to the Azure Active Directory Admin Center, then you need to check if you can ask your IT department or anyone around you in the company who does have the access to follow these steps and set up this information so that he or she can give you the information that you need to set up the SSO. After the creation of the app, we need to do two more things. First is going to the single sign-on, and here we need to enable the SAML, the Security Assertion Markup Language Protocol. So enable SAML, and in here we need to set up some of the basic attributes. So we're going to the basic SAML configuration, click on Edit, and here we're going to set up some stuff. So the first link is going to be the application that we're going to be working from. So Azure SSO install in this case. In your case, it's going to be your identifier, of course. https://betty.app. So get the URL for your application. Then the sign-on URL is going to be your URL/login. It's very important to make sure that you have these two set up. And for the reply URL, we need something different. We need, well, basically, let me grab it. We need the Bettyblocks link. So you're going to need to use https ://app-id.bettyblocks.com/saml/callback. And where there's app ID, you need to fill in, well, whatever your app ID is, of course. So in my case, Azure SSO install. So because this is the link that will be pointing back towards the Azure Active Directory Admin Center, or towards the AAD. So now that you've set up the basic SAML configuration, you can press save in the top and you get some information back from Azure, which we need to, well, let me click away this information. No, I'll test it later. And now there is a really important URL that we need to get back and we need to put in our Betty application. So from the bottom, after setting up your basic configuration, scroll down to step 4 and copy the login URL beneath the Setup Azure SSO Install tab. So copy to clipboard. We're almost ready to fill in the blanks within our Bettyblocks application. However, there's one more thing in AAD itself, in the Azure environment, and that is you need to go to users and groups and add the users you want to be able to log in. Because if you don't add these users, then, well, those users won't be able to log into your application. So in here, I'm going to add the user that's going to be myself. So Odin, select, and I'll just give myself a default role. So I'm a user right now. So first, install the single sign-on, then add yourself or a couple of users via the Users and Groups tab. Really important. If you want more people to be able to access your application, add them here at the Users and Groups part. After you've set all of this up and copied the login URL, go back to your Bettyblocks application and go back to the back office. When in the back office, open up the Azure SSO's grid, the first record, and then click on the Configure SSO link. Copy and paste the URL, the login URL from Azure in the SSO Target URL. For the app ID, we will need Azure SSO install, or whatever your application is called. And then for the identifier, we will need the app name itself, the application itself. So here we go, .betty.app. So the name of your application, the login URL from the Azure portal, and your application's URL. After you set this up, you can press the execute button. It should have been set up correctly, so we can now test this out. So let's go to our front end. Let's go to the home page and press play or compile to immediately go to the login page, because your home page is checked with authentication. And as you can see, the Azure login is being asked. So we can click on the Azure login button. The Microsoft login from the single sign-on pops up. So it luckily already knows my account. So please don't look. This is very important to me. Stay signed. Sure, don't show this again. No, don't stay signed in. But we are being redirected and I am logged in to the application. So as you can see, the single sign-on is working and we have everything set up to get into our application with our Azure SSO. After you've set this up, you can, well, add more things onto your application, fill up your data model, and start working on your Azure login application. So that's it, and good luck logging in.